All right, this is our final lecture in the free will unit and our final lecture of the semester. Hopefully it's a good one for your sake. Well, this is where we last left off with this argument. Determinism and indeterminism are logically exhaustive. In other words, if determinism is true, we don't have free will. If indeterminism is true, we don't have free will. So, we don't have free will. That is where we left off. So just for review, recall, determinism says we don't have free will because our actions are determined by the past and laws of nature. And we don't have control over the past or the laws of nature. Now, the compatibilist, who wanted to say that free will and determinism are, well, compatible, offered a conditional analysis of the phrase could do otherwise than X, but we saw that that didn't succeed either. Indeterminism also didn't get us free will, though. Just because there's more than one possible future doesn't mean we have control over that future. In fact, indeterminate events can happen to us that we have no control over. So, and then those are the two options. That's it. There's no third option. Determinism or indeterminism. That exhausts it. Thus, we have no free will. That's a disconcerting thesis. That's a scary conclusion for most of us. It's one we want to avoid, but we don't think we can. Well, in this lecture, we're going to look at one way to avoid it. Because, well, we want it. We want free will. If we don't have free will, it's hard to make sense of how it could even be coherent to hold ourselves and others morally responsible for our actions, for example. We want a world where we can be held morally responsible for the naughty stuff we do. Or we can be legitimately praised for the good stuff we do. Our whole justice system assumes this. Plus, we want to be something more than just really smart vacuum cleaners. We're not robots or Hoosers. So, what we want to do is find a way to avoid the dilemma. Recall, here's the dilemma. Determinism and indeterminism are logically exhaustive. Either determinism or indeterminism. We want that third option. So, we're going to do what philosophers call going between the horns. So dilemmas have like horns, and we're going to go between them, which isn't always recommended. But we're going to be more like this guy, okay? Defiantly go between the horns and conquer the dilemma. So here's the strategy. Recall that the compatibilist strategy of denying that determinism is incompatible with free will via the conditional analysis failed. For the conditional analysis failed to capture what we mean by free will. This leaves the third premise. If determinism is false, and hence indeterminism is true, then we have no free will. But denying the third premise just doesn't seem hopeful. Recall the discussion of indeterminism. Events that are undetermined by the past and the laws of nature are just spontaneous or random. However, we can't be said to have spontaneous and random events within our control any more than we can have determined events within our control. But there's an important gap in our discussion of events. Until now, we have supposed that events must either be determined by the past, the laws of nature, or else undetermined in the sense that they are just random, spontaneous events over which we have no control. But maybe there's another way. That is, we've supposed that our arms rising must occur given the prior circumstances, or that our arms rising merely happened to occur, and could have failed to occur since there is nothing from which its occurrence follows. But this is a false dichotomy. In fact, in the cases of free human actions, if it is false that the event is determined by the past events, plus the laws of nature, and if it is false that the event is brought about by nothing at all, then it must be true that something other than an event brings it about. So maybe the problem is assuming that only events can be what brings about other events. So think about this. Let's rethink freedom. Consider how we typically speak about free actions. We speak about someone's bringing about those actions or events. When your arm raises, it's you who raise your arm. It's not some event. So, thinking about human freedom this way, many philosophers reject the dilemma of free will because it ignores an option above that we're going to call agent causation, where it's not just events that are causes of other events. Sometimes agents can be causes of events. And agents, by the way, aren't events. But, so then these philosophers will say that premise 3, that indeterminism entails that we don't have free will, is false. And in fact, events can be determined by the passive laws of nature or random. But events can also be caused by agents. So, agency has an advantage. The advantage of taking seriously the very plausible claim that we do things. That things are within our power to perform or not to perform, and that it is up to us what we do. We have the power. And we'll call the view of free will that challenges premise 3 by holding that free actions are actions caused by agents, agency theory, or we'll call it agent causation. Either or, doesn't matter. Well, agency theory's central thesis is that when a person performs a free action, the behavior is not brought about by other events or changes within the agent. That is, agency theory denies that free action could be determined by something other than the agent. Now, of course, agency theory does not deny that events happen within agents. It's a part of the story of my raising my hand that there are events involving muscles, joints, and so on. But from none of that above does it follow that such events cannot be made to happen by you, the agent, immediately prior to your raising your hand. So an agent, then, we'll say, is to be considered not just as a mere collection of events or particles. Instead, it's an active thing, an active substance, a thing with powers that by its very nature can bring about events we call free acts. So when you say you perform some act freely, you believe that the action was within your power, the exercise of which brings the action about. And your exercise of that power is associated with what we call willing or deciding or choosing. So then on agency theory, genuine free acts are not random at all, because the agent brings them about. Genuine free acts, then, are also not determined in the sense a determinist has in mind by the past and the laws of nature. For on agency theory, it's possible for the laws and prior conditions to be the same prior to your raising your hand, but you instead decline from raising your hand. So, this view of causation that we have assumed in the class so far is that causation is a relation between events. And this is what philosophers call event causation. One event, the cause, is earlier than a later event, the effect. E1 causes E2. Event 1 causes event 2. Well, agency theory posits, in addition to events, a second kind of causal relata. Agents, like you and me, and your mom and dad, and everyone else. So sometimes in the case of free action, the relata on the left is an agent then, instead of an event. Agent A causes event E, okay? Now, someone might complain that this is mysterious, but the agency theorists can respond that event causation is just as mysterious. In the case of event causation, it's difficult to say what more there is to saying event X caused A than to simply say that X occurred and A occurred. To the extent that we are then allowed to make claims of the type X made A occur, the agency theorist will say that we are also allowed to make claims of the type agent S made A occur. So the event of the billiard ball being hit by the cue caused the event of the 9 ball going to the hole. Or we could say the pool player hit the cue ball. It was an agent action that caused the 9 to go in the hole. Well, further, the agency theorist recommends that we have in fact a better grip on agent causation than we do on event causation. For at least this much is true. We are familiar with cases where we, as active thinking things, conjure up ideas or mental images in our imagination at will. And in these cases, we are agents producing something. Mental images, for example. So think about this. You, close your eyes and imagine a pink elephant. You cause that mental image of a pink elephant. You, an agent, caused that. We have experience all the time of agents causing stuff. Okay? So, in fact, you can will yourself to think of a pink elephant, to imagine a pink elephant. You have a really good understanding of what goes on that. So the agency theorist says that we have a better understanding of agent causation than we do of other types of causation. In fact, so they're turning the tables on the event causal theorist who says that agency theory is mysterious. So the agency theorist will respond then that while we have no experience of the causal power allegedly present when events are said to cause events, we are acquainted with the power that agents exert when bringing certain happenings about. And this power at work, in the case of imagination, for example, well, it's no different from the power that agents exercise when willing to raise their arm. And that's a beautiful theory. You can read more about it in the book. I've enjoyed this semester with all of you. May the force be with you.